It is 2 in the morning and you are hanging off the edge of your mattress, limbs stiff, trying to reclaim the 3 inches of territory left to you by a sleeping, twitching, sprawling ball of fur that seems to weigh 500 pounds. You have tried to nudge them, maybe even shifted your weight to reclaim your side, but they just sigh, press their back harder into your spine, and settle deeper into the warmth of your covers. You think it is just a habit, or maybe they just like the soft surface of the bed, but you are wrong. This is not about the comfort of the mattress or the temperature of the room. This is a deliberate, multi-millennium evolutionary choice, a complex neurochemical strategy that has been refined over thousands of years. Your dog is not just taking up your space, they are actively managing their environment, their stress, and their relationship with you in a way that is far more sophisticated than anything you could have imagined. When you realize what is actually happening in those quiet, dark hours, that tiny patch of space you're fighting for suddenly feels like the most significant territory on Earth. The secret to this behavior is buried in the way your dog views you, which is fundamentally different from how they view any other entity on the planet. Researchers at Eötvös Loránd University in Budapest have spent years putting this bond to the test, using the same Ainsworth strange situation framework that developmental psychologists use to measure the bond between a human infant and their mother. They analyzed proximity seeking, the level of distress when separated, and the calming effect upon reunion, and the results were startling. Roughly 61% of dogs demonstrate a secure attachment to their owners, a statistical figure that mirrors the exact percentage of human toddlers securely attached to their primary caregivers. When your dog pushes themselves against your body in the middle of the night, they are not just looking for a cushion. They are executing a biological safety protocol. They are telling their own nervous system that you are the singular, most reliable source of security in their entire world. This physical contact initiates a biological feedback loop that is arguably the most powerful mechanism in the canine-human relationship. Scientists at Azabu University in Japan have mapped the mechanics of the oxytocin gaze loop, a chemical cascade where a dog looks into their owner's eyes, triggering a surge of oxytocin in both the human and the dog, which in turn encourages more gazing and more bonding. It is a feedback loop that simply does not exist elsewhere in the natural world. If you were to raise a wolf from birth, bottle feed it, and spend every waking moment with it, that chemical loop would fail to ignite. The wolf does not possess the genetic architecture to sustain that level of cross-species neurochemical exchange. For your dog, however, 10 minutes of calm physical contact while lying next to you is enough to drop your cortisol levels and simultaneously lower their own heart rate. You are both being physiologically tuned for the deep, restorative sleep your bodies crave, essentially plugging into each other to calibrate your internal clocks. To understand why this feels so instinctual, you have to look back 15,000 years to a time before civilization, before farming, and before any of the structures we call home today. Imagine the silhouette of a campfire against a vast, dark, prehistoric landscape, with the shadows of wolves flickering at the very edge of the firelight. There is a 14,000-year-old burial site in Germany that tells a story of this transition better than any textbook. A dog and its human were laid to rest together, but evidence shows the dog had been suffering from canine distemper. The animal had been nursed for 5 agonizing weeks, a level of care that provided no survival advantage to the human, yet was given regardless. This is because humans did not just tame these animals, we fundamentally altered their biological makeup. Dogs now carry specific genetic insertions on chromosome 6 that grant them a level of hypersociability that is absent in wolves. We did not just invite them into our houses, we hardwired them to need our presence as much as they need food or water. This creates a curious paradox, especially when you look at the data coming out of the Mayo Clinic. Their sleep studies show that dogs objectively disrupt the quality of our sleep, causing more micro-awakenings and light sleep phases throughout the night. By all clinical metrics, you should be getting less rest with a dog in your bed. Yet, when you talk to dog owners, they consistently report feeling more satisfied, more rested, and more emotionally grounded. A phenomenon supported by a 2024 study from the University of Jyväskylä in Finland. The reason for this discrepancy lies in heart rate variability co-regulation. Your heart and your dog's heart begin to beat in a form of rhythmic alignment that mimics the synchronization found between parents and their own infants. This is not just a shared space, it is a shared physiological state. An unfamiliar person in your bed would raise your heart rate and keep your nervous system on guard, but your dog does the exact opposite, soothing your brain into a state of rest that standard metrics often fail to capture. However, There is a reason to be vigilant because if your dog suddenly begins to avoid your bed, it is almost never a random change in preference. It is a signal and it is usually a warning. If you notice your dog hesitating at the edge of the mattress or struggling to find the angle to jump up, you are likely witnessing the earliest detectable sign of joint deterioration or arthritis. They aren't trying to be difficult or distant. They are in pain, and the vertical leap has become a calculation of suffering they would rather avoid. Beyond the physical, you must also consider the cognitive. Roughly 35% of dogs over the age of 8 will begin to exhibit symptoms of canine cognitive dysfunction, essentially a form of canine dementia. This condition systematically erodes their spatial memory and disrupts their sleep-wake cycles, leading to confusion and the abandonment of old rituals. When their behavior toward your nightly routine shifts, they are not changing their mind about you. They are struggling with a world that is becoming increasingly difficult for them to navigate. When you look at your dog tonight, curled into that tiny space, know that this is not an accident of convenience. They have traveled through thousands of years of evolution, survived the transition from the wild to the hearth, and sacrificed their own ancestral independence just to be able to sleep within reach of your heartbeat. They are choosing you out of every other possibility, every other human, and every other comfort. They are keeping their side of a bargain that was struck long before you were born. Look at the way they occupy your space and recognize that they are not just taking up your room, they are filling a void in their own biology that only you can provide. Drop a comment below and tell me, what percentage of the bed does your dog take up tonight? And if you have ever wondered why they hold that specific, unblinking gaze into your eyes for minutes at a time, it is because that stare is the literal ignition point for the connection you both share. And the science behind why they do it is even more mind-bending than the way they sleep.